Squidward Tentacles hates Spongebob Squarepants. Or does he? Okay, yeah, he does. So, why does he put up with him so much? Why doesn't he move away to Tentacle Acres? Why does he still work at the Krusty Krab? Could it be because secretly he's actually there to protect SpongeBob from nefarious ocean dwellers? What if someone hired Squidward to be SpongeBob's bodyguard? This is the Squidward bodyguard theory. As we all know, SpongeBob is very naive, which makes it very easy for him to get into trouble. In fact, half the time he's in trouble, he doesn't even realize it. Need I remind you of the Tattletale Strangler? And this is SpongeBob as a full-grown adult. Imagine what he must have been like as a kid. Surely, he was getting himself into trouble all the time. Like, I can just imagine baby SpongeBob wandering off and nearly burning himself on a hydrothermal vent or something because he thought it looked cool.
Well, at least I still have my personality.
Adult SpongeBob is no less naive. In fact, he's so naive that he regularly presents a danger to himself. SpongeBob's parents must be aware of this. Perhaps they were even worried about whether or not he'd be able to take care of himself after he moved out. Maybe, as a result of this, they wanted to have somebody to keep an eye on him, just in case something bad happened. They would have done this secretly, of course, because they wouldn't want to patronize him, and they would want their son to have the full independence that comes from being an adult living on their own. Or at least, make him feel like that is the case. So what if Margaret and Harold Squarepants approached Squidward after SpongeBob moved in next door and offered to pay him to keep an eye on their kid? It might sound a bit far-fetched, but if you give me a chance to explain, you won't be disappointed. Let us start with Squidward's job. Squidward and SpongeBob have been coworkers at the Krusty Krab since the pilot episode Help Wanted, with very few exceptions. Importantly, as we learned in Help Wanted, Squidward already worked at the Krusty Krab before SpongeBob got hired. Assuming SpongeBob's parents visited the restaurant at least once before SpongeBob got hired there, they would have known that Squidward works there. And in Truth or Square, it was confirmed that the couple visited the Krusty Krab at least once while Margaret was pregnant with SpongeBob.
Yummy!
Now, SpongeBob and Squidward are probably around the same age, so Squidward definitely would not have been working there at the time, but who's to say the family didn't return to the restaurant many times after this? At the very least, the couple knew the restaurant existed, which makes it plausible. And after all, SpongeBob obviously loved it, and every good parent wants to treat their kid to their favorite meal every once in a while, right? So if Margaret and Harold became regulars at the Krusty Krab in their youth, the couple would have become familiar with Squidward once he started working there. Perhaps they even got to know him a little bit. Maybe they found out that he lives on Conch Street, right next door to a vacant pineapple. Knowing what their son is like, perhaps this led them to going to Squidward for some help. After all, Squidward is a much more mature, adult-like person who could keep an eye on the little square dude. With him living next door and working at the Krusty Krab, he would basically be within earshot of him virtually 24/7, making him the perfect candidate for an undercover bodyguard. This would explain two major quirks of Squidward's life. The fact that he never leaves the Krusty Krab and that he never moves out of his Easter Island head. As we all know, Squidward hates his job. He hates Mr. Krabs, he hates dealing with customers, he hates Krabby Patties, most of the time anyways, and he hates SpongeBob. At least, that's what he would want us to believe. There are moments throughout the show that prove he actually cares about SpongeBob, many of which I will be talking about because they are relevant to this theory. So how come Squidward never moves out of his home on Conch Street? Now you might be thinking, but he does move out. In the episode Squidville, he moves into Tentacle Acres, finally getting away from SpongeBob and Patrick. This is true, I can't deny it. But what happens at the end of that episode? Oh yeah, he leaves riding on a reef blower. And in the very next episode, he's back to his normal living situation. Big surprise, right? Obviously, Squidward doesn't love being around SpongeBob all the time, so sometimes he just needs a little break. We all need a break sometimes. Maybe he even talked to Margaret and Harold about it before he left. Bodyguards need vacation time too, you know. And truth be told, SpongeBob wasn't in any real danger when he took this break. But whenever he does get into danger, Squidward steps up. Like in the episode Pizza Delivery. When SpongeBob tries to hitchhike on a passing truck, Squidward dives in front of it, tackling SpongeBob off the road so he doesn't get hit. He literally put his life on the line to protect SpongeBob. Now, that is exactly what a real bodyguard would do. But is it something that someone who doesn't really like you would do? Probably not. In the first SpongeBob movie, Squidward also takes a stand against Plankton. Granted, he probably should have gone with SpongeBob and Patrick to Shell City, but maybe that was just a bridge too far for him. Despite staying behind, he becomes the only Bikini Bottomite to stand up to Plankton as he catches on to what he's doing and threatens to report him to King Neptune, which would have saved SpongeBob from the rest of his arduous adventure. Obviously, things didn't work out that way, but you can't say he didn't try. Granted, if your job is a bodyguard, it's more of a do or do not kind of situation. There is no try, but he rarely takes his job at the Krusty Krab seriously, so it's not out of character for him to slack off a little bit. In the episode Clams, when Mr. Krabs basically kidnaps both SpongeBob and Squidward, our favorite cephalopod tries to save them again by leading an attempt to escape on a lifeboat. Again, this attempt fails, but at least he's trying. He's also trying to save himself in this case, but he easily could have tried to sneak off on his own, leaving SpongeBob behind, but he didn't do that, did he? Perhaps one of the more notable instances of Squidward looking out for SpongeBob comes when he runs into the Tattletale Strangler, which is ironic because SpongeBob hires a bodyguard himself in the episode, although it turned out to be the Strangler. So actually, Squidward did more to protect SpongeBob in the episode than SpongeBob himself did, which actually kind of proves my point, I think. At least the part about SpongeBob being dangerously naive. One could argue that Squidward should have done more to protect SpongeBob in this episode, and you would probably be correct in saying so. And now I know it's starting to look like he's a pretty lousy bodyguard, but I'm not arguing that Squidward is a good bodyguard, okay? Like, he's still a lazy asshole most of the time, so I would not necessarily expect him to be good at it. In the episode Idiot Box, he shows genuine concern for SpongeBob after kicking the box, causing an avalanche. This could be because he actually secretly does like SpongeBob, or it could be because he's worried he might have just lost his next paycheck. Or both things could be true. I mean, I do think Squidward does actually like SpongeBob, he just thinks he's annoying, and those things are not mutually exclusive. But we do know that Squidward is pretty self centered, so a lot of his concern for other people comes from how it impacts his life. Like in the SpongeBob movie, when Mr. Krabs gets frozen by King Neptune, he isn't concerned for Mr. Krabs' well being, he's concerned about who's going to sign his paycheck. Or in Naughty Nautical Neighbors, he tries to fix SpongeBob and Patrick's friendship just so they will stop annoying him as they try to one up each other. He doesn't really care if SpongeBob and Patrick are friends or not. In fact, he probably wishes they weren't, so they would bother him less. But he gets them back together when it's convenient for him to do so. That being said, it's pretty clear that regardless of how Squidward really feels about SpongeBob, he does find him annoying and hard to be around all the time. Furthermore, his job at the Krusty Krab surely wouldn't be enough for him to live off of, right? After all, Mr. Krabs is the cheapest crustacean to ever exist. In fact, I kind of made a video about that, which I will put in the corner of the screen now if you're interested. In that video, I break down how Mr. Krabs is so cheap, pointing out how he charges Squidward for standing and otherwise just existing while at his job, just because profits were down 5 cents month over month. I think many fans of SpongeBob have wondered how SpongeBob and Squidward can afford to live their lives because of this, or at least I certainly have. And explaining how SpongeBob can afford it might take some mental gymnastics, but luckily this video isn't really about him, so I'm just going to ignore that for now. But I think I can explain how Squidward can afford it. This is how I think of it. If Squidward is secretly SpongeBob's bodyguard and is being paid by SpongeBob's parents, obviously that salary would be enough for him to live off of while his paychecks from the Krusty Krab are just a little added bonus. This could also explain why Squidward gets so desperate for SpongeBob to return to the Krusty Krab every time he leaves. Like in the episode SpongeBob You're Fired and Goodbye Krabby Patty, he ends up begging SpongeBob to come back to the Krusty Krab. Why would he do that? Could it be because SpongeBob's parents were threatening to cut his pay since he couldn't keep an eye on him while he was at work anymore? Even when Squidward is supposed to have the day off from work, he ends up checking in on SpongeBob, like in the episode Squid's Day Off. Despite having full authority to leave the sponge alone, he continuously races back to the restaurant to make sure he's okay. We know he isn't doing this for Mr. Krabs. He couldn't care less if his boss lost $1 or if the whole restaurant burned down. But what if he felt guilty because he wasn't doing his real job? Again, to keep an eye on SpongeBob. If he was being paid by SpongeBob's parents to protect him, It could also explain why he was comfortable giving away basically all of his possessions when he pretended to be Santa Claus just to cheer up SpongeBob. Maybe Margaret and Harold even gave him a special bonus to do so after they discovered how distraught their son was after Santa didn't visit Bikini Bottom for Christmas. After all, Squidward definitely would not have been able to replace all of his stuff on his Krusty Krab salary alone, so surely he must have had some other source of income. At this point, you might be wondering why Squidward would agree to do this, though. Yeah, the money might be nice, but if he can't stand being around SpongeBob so much, wouldn't he eventually just quit? That's a good point, but as I alluded to earlier, I don't think Squidward actually hates SpongeBob that much. In fact, I think he likes him a lot. I think Squidward likes SpongeBob a lot more than he lets on. First off, in Graveyard Shift, he openly admits to liking SpongeBob while he hugged him, fearing that the hash slinging slasher was about to unalive them both.
SpongeBob, no matter what I've said, I've always sort of liked you.
At the end of Pizza Delivery, he stands up for SpongeBob, making an active effort to make him feel better after the customer made him cry. In SpongeBob 129, he admits to missing him after he got lost traveling through time. In Fools in April, he apologized to him after pulling a bad prank on him. In Dying for Pie, he spends the whole day with him and even cries when he thinks he died at the end. This is just a handful of times Squidward showed that he cares for SpongeBob. Do these sound like things someone would do for somebody they hate? So if Squidward doesn't hate SpongeBob, wouldn't it make sense that he would continue to agree to be his secret bodyguard? What do you think? Did I convince you? Do you think Squidward is SpongeBob's secret bodyguard, or is there another reason he sticks around? That's all for this one. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked it, please do drop a like. That would really help me out. And if you really liked it, I'll put another one on screen for you right now. Take care. I'll catch you next time. And as always, never forget to be yourself.